Hey guys, welcome to my March reading wrap-up. I'm starting out going back in my reading journal and just filling in the beginning where I put my favorite book of the month. I forgot to do February. Moving on to March, I'm going to put my book of the month and Owl Crate photos in. If you haven't received your box yet, close your eyes for a second. The next page is for quotes, and normally I have a hard time with my quotes page because usually when I read, I get so into the book that I don't think to make note of the things that people say, but there are actually quite a few that I remembered this month, mostly from the Court of Thorns and Roses books. I also printed them out instead of writing them all because they were pretty long quotes. I decided to add this leaf doodle onto the page because it looked kind of blank with just the quotes. I felt like it needed some kind of decoration. My favorite book this month was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I am giving it 10 stars because this is my journal and I can do what I want. I loved every single page in this book. For 2 days after reading this, I was just broken. It took so much from me, but also gave me one of the greatest stories I've ever read. I felt every part of this story deep in my soul. It was so amazing. I'm so happy I finally picked up this series. So in March, I read 11 books. This was one of the best reading months I've had in a while. Not in number of books, but in terms of how amazing the books were that I read. I read 3 5-star books and 5 4-star books. I read mostly fantasy with a few romance. I started off March finishing up the King of Wall Street series with The British Knight and The Earl of London. These were just okay for me. I think my issue was more with the narrators than the actual story. Next, I read all of the Shadow and Bone books, and if you watched my last video, then you know that I completely fell for this trilogy. The first one was pretty good, but the last one, Ruin and Rising, was epic. There were a few times that had me tearing up. So I want to know from those of you that read the books, what are your thoughts on Mal? I have to admit that he just didn't do it for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, he seemed like a great guy, but I guess I just had a hard time getting over the fact that he basically ditched Alina for like 16 years. I don't know. I just wasn't that impressed with his character. I feel like he was just kind of flat when the Darkling and Nikolai were so expressive and dynamic. After the Shadow and Bone trilogy, I finished the Cruel Prince series. Overall, I would say it's about a 3.5-star series for me. Not great, not terrible. I think my biggest issue was I just didn't like most of the characters. June was kind of blah to me until The Queen of Nothing, and then she got a little bit better. Same with Carden. I really didn't like him until The Queen of Nothing, and then he started to grow on me. Taryn was the absolute worst. I stuck around mainly just to see what happened, and I kind of just really loved Vivi and Heather. Once I finished listening to How the King of Elfhame Learned to Tell Stories, which is the best one in my opinion, I immediately jumped into A Court of Thorns and Roses. I honestly thought this was going to be my favorite book of the month until A Court of Mist and Fury literally stole my heart right from my chest. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't say much, but the world building and the character building were pure perfection, and any other book is going to have a very hard time competing. Feyre's transformations in both books is so visual and happy and sad and just so great to read. I cannot say enough good things about these two books. After A Court of Mist and Fury, my soul was just broken. So it took me a couple days to start another book. I knew I needed something light and easy to read, so I chose Love Her and Lose Her by Tessa Bailey. It's the second book in the Fixer Up series, but it's a standalone about different characters. I really enjoyed Fixer Up, so I was excited to read this one, but it was just kind of meh for me. I had a really hard time relating to these characters, but I did like the interaction between all of the female characters and how they supported each other. That was what really made me give this 3 stars. Alright, so that's everything I read in March. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you aren't already. See you guys in my next one. Bye!